You match one of our Esper Brain in a Jar control deck, and we are on the draw. So this hand is pretty dicey. Our opponent mulligans to 6, and I have kind of an advantage here. I don't know if our opponent remembers us, but I'm pretty sure he's on some kind of black-green mid-range deck. So he probably remembers what we're doing too, because we're unusual, but I've played him a day or so before. And I think that against a Malta 6 with Think Twice and Esper Charm, and also a combination of Spell Pierce and Logic Knot for Liliana, this is pretty justified. It's bad, but it's not the worst. So we're going to keep this. If he Thought Seizes, he more or less has to take Spell Pierce, which is kind of good for us because it's not a great card. But Resolving Lily is really how he wins this. So he plays a land. We're hoping he plays like Collective Brutality or something, but probably going to be a creature, and it's a Grimflayer. We're going to fetch. Fortunately, we have 3 lands now, which means Logic Knot is live. We can counter another creature, and we draw a Brain in a Jar, which means we have a combo. That's nice. Opponent Inquisitions. So here we could either Logic Knot this, even though Logic Knot is the better card, we could burn it on an Inquisition, or we could Spell Pierce it. I choose to Spell Pierce it, which has to be wrong, right? Because if you think about what our potential lines are, we really want to play Brain in a Jar next turn and force our opponent to have Abrupt Decay. If we play Spell Pierce now, that means we're not holding up any 1-mana interaction to play on our 3rd turn, or our opponent's 4th turn. So I definitely should have used Logic Knot here. That was a huge mistake, and hopefully we don't get punished by something. Say, like, we would be playing around Maelstrom Pulse. If we kept Spell Pierce, we would be able to counter a Lily or a Lingering Souls, which we might want to do. We could play around Collective Brutality if our opponent ran it out before playing a land. As it stands, we're taking more damage, and our opponent's getting a lot of card selection from Grimflayer. That's not great, but we're still in a decent shot. If we get to Fuse Bet Call, we probably win. And our opponent plays Lily, so again, we're being punished for not holding up Spell Pierce. That was just a really bad play on my part. I'm going to discard Think Twice because even for 2 mana, we're not going to have an opportunity to play it in the next couple of turns, probably. And here we're just going to fuse on our turn. Oh, we could have done it on our opponent's upkeep, just in case they draw a creature. But given that we have Push in hand and Logic Knot before we bet call there, I think I'm probably going to counter whatever my opponent's play is. Anyway, we draw another bet call. So we have the option to Esper Charm for 1 mana on our next turn, or Tick Down Jar to bet call in 2 turns. Our opponent discards Nile Spellbomb instead of playing it out, which means that they're probably going to activate Stirring Wildwood here, and we're left with a decision. So if we block with all 4 of our tokens, we know we can kill our opponent's whole board, right? We quadruple block Stirring Wildwood, and then push Grimflayer Path to Life, something like that. That would be fine. We could definitely do that. Maybe I should have, and then we pressure Lily for 1 a turn. That actually seems like a better line. We could also quadruple block Grimflayer, but that's just worse, right? Because we lose more creatures. So rather than doing that, I decide I kind of get this perverse. Obviously, if we kill 2 creatures here, we probably want to kill Flayer and Goyf because Wildwood takes so much mana, right, to tap to. Even if our opponent's going to get 1 mana from the path, we still want them tapping out. However, I decided to just push it because I get this like perverse pleasure out of disrespecting Goyf because it's like not that great in this matchup, even if it's one of the best cards at rate ever printed, right? I just enjoy leaving it on the board. Kind of, it was a bad play, but at the same time, since our opponent didn't draw anything that turn, I don't think we can really lose here. We're gonna crack this Flooded Strand. We're gonna play the Swamp because it's painless. We're gonna swing for 3 at Lily because we don't mind getting hit by Goyf again. This is again just like playing with fire, Our opponent plays a Tasigur, which we're gonna counter, and makes us discard, we assume. So we're gonna get rid of Grave there. We'll scribe first to get max information, but I decided we want to get rid of Grave. Keeps ROMs on top. This gives us the option to draw 10 cards next turn, counting our draw step. So we can bet call off Jar, which we obviously want to bet call off Jar instead of Srams, right? Because we don't draw cards from the Srams tokens if we back off of it. So we bet call off Jar after we kill Lily. We're just gonna main phase it because we might want to do something with Srams. Like if we draw another call, I would probably just run all this crap out just because. And then we have the option to, so this is 4 cards, we drew 1 already, that's 5. We draw 3 more from this, and then cast Esper Charm off of it to go to 10, which is great, and our opponent scoops at this point. The second time we fuse bet call, it's just, that's game. Alright, welcome back for game 2. I had to cut there because I didn't want to show the whole league result, but I have to do this one match off of the league page because the game history version is a little screwy. So here we see this hand on the draw again, and it's not great, but if our opponent has turn 1 Disruption, they basically have to take Spell Pierce because they want to resolve Lily. And I decide, like, one of the nice things about this deck is that if you have a bunch of lands, you can kind of keep it because the deck's strategy is actually to catch up from behind to a certain extent, right? So I decided to keep it. Opponent plays a Brutality, takes Esper Charm, and discards Souls, which means that they're probably expecting us to counter Souls this turn. And I'm not going to do that. We draw a Path. We don't really want to Path the Souls, especially when our opponent's missing land drops, but we're content to take 2 for the moment. Opponent plays a Hierarch. We could have countered that. Doesn't seem worth doing to me. Our opponent's going to hit lands eventually. We get to think twice, which is good. Now we can think twice and hold up Logic Knot. Our opponent plays Souls, and we want to counter this for sure. Well, not necessarily for sure, but I would like to keep our opponent doing 2 damage a turn. We're going to get to Colonnade mana before terribly long, and we, want to hit like a Supreme Verdict or something at this point. So we don't have... I want to Esper Charm to draw 2, especially since our opponent's playing Souls. I want to Esper Charm to draw 2 instead of playing Think Twice because we want to get a little deeper. And I decided to main phase it so we can decide whether to play Colonnade tapped or play an island and hold something up. So we Esper Charm and draw 2. Since we draw Think Twice, I decided to play an island. Keep running this out. Opponent swings for 2. We assume they're going to flashback Souls, and then we're going to Think Twice. So we're just drawing a bunch of lands, and we had the option last turn to flashback or to play Call. I decided not to, even though Call would trade for all of these, we would get really blown out by Maelstrom Pulse. I decided I would prefer to do nothing and flashback 2 Think Twices this turn, going to 5. That seems fine. We have a path if our opponent plays a better threat, so I'm not gonna do that. Opponent plays flashes back Souls, and we flashback 2 Think Twices. And just drawing a bunch of lands, but we do finally hit a Verdict. So we're just going to go ahead and Verdict here. The nice thing about this is we have a fetch, and we're on 6 lands, now 7. That means we can painlessly fetch Breeding Pool at the end of our opponent's turn, and then we can draw 4 off of Bet Call. So we're going to do that, play Ghost Quarter, and we draw a bunch of cards. We draw Cryptic, Brain in a Jar, and Think Twice. I decided to discard Think Twice. Our opponent plays a Grim Flare. We run out Brain in a Jar and attack with 2. If our opponent wants to trade that, that's fine. Otherwise, we're just going to double block or block the 2 Souls, right? Trade with those and Path the Flare. Cryptic whatever our opponent does to restock their board. They're out of Souls in the yard. Seems to me they played a little too aggressively into Supreme Verdict earlier when they had a 4-power clock. I think that was enough. I want to play Stony Silence, which we could counter, but I just don't really care. If we draw another Beck call, we can always just Cryptic, bounce, Stony Silence, and Beck in response since our jar's on 1. So here we have a lot of mana. In fact, we have enough mana to hold up Cryptic and Spell Snare while activating Colonnade. So we're just going to keep swinging. Opponent plays Pulse. I'm going to let it resolve. I don't mind. We have to think twice to flashback. We get a Sroms. Pretty good. I'd rather hold up Cryptic and Spell Snare. Opponent plays Hierarch. Opponent plays Fulminator Mage. We need to protect our main threat here. And we draw a Snap, so we have enough mana to snap Cryptic after activating Colonnade. I don't think we can really lose here unless our opponent draws like specifically Ghost Quarter, but draws a Fulminator. Now Path could be a thing that kills us, but he doesn't have Path, and Cryptic Fulminator, and we win. So that's good. Easy run against Abzan there. We drew pretty well. That matchup is reasonably close to even. Close enough to even that we're pretty happy when the matchup works out that well. Obviously, our opponent was a little locked on lands at first, but I'm not sure that was really the issue. They were kind of overloaded on Lingering Souls, which is usually good against control, but like not quite as good against us maybe as it is against some control decks. So it kind of makes sideboarding against us a little more difficult, and they also brought in Fulminators, which may have been better served being main deck cards. It depends on what they brought out, I guess. They might have taken out their Decays and things like that, which is especially bad if they have Stony Silence out. As a side note, I would not recommend bringing in Stony Silence against our deck, especially when you have so many ways to interact with our combo. You don't want to water down your threat base or your answer base. I think Stony Silence, against Esper Charm, first of all, it's just bad. And, we have Sroms. Our opponent didn't know, right? Our opponent didn't know we had Sroms. So, it's kind of reasonable. But at the end of the day, we're an Esper Drago deck, and you don't want to bring in mediocre cards and give us fewer things to counter. I think. But well played by our opponent. Kind of unfortunate draws there. See you in match 2.